Welcome to Sightline. The last week of January marks the Civil Society Day. This day has been observed in our country since 2008 in order to promote citizens' engagement in social development process. On the occasion of this particular day in 2020, we wanted to talk with one of Mongolia's most prominent human rights advocates, Ms. Urantsooj Gombosuren. She is a co-founder and chairperson for the Center for Human Rights and Development of Mongolia. She is also the first female chair of Asian Forum for the Human Rights and Development. Thank you, Ms. Urantsooj, for accepting our invitation.
Thank you very much. I think that it's a very good opportunity for us as well. Thank you.
Okay, so first of all, can I ask you about the history of Civil Society Day in Mongolia?
Yes, of course. You know, in 2007, we had the Civil Society New Year event. And at that event, by that time, there were two parliament members, member of parliament, Mr. Ottenchimit, who was actually before the parliament former chair of Red Cross Mongolia. And then also Ms. Dolgor, she is also, at that time she was also a parliament member, but she was, before that, she was very closely involved in the work of Women's Lawyers Association. So these two MPs came to our Civil Society New Year celebrations and announced about the Parliament resolution on having this Civil Society Day.
So this was the initiative of those two parliament members who had prior civil society experience.
Yes.
That's right. Our audience might be interested in learning about civil society organizations in Mongolia, their past, present, and potential future.
Since 1997, when the NGO law was adopted, the Mongolian civil society organizations received legal status. And since then, many NGOs were registered. And nowadays, we have like statistics around 20,000 NGOs registered in Mongolia. But at the same time, we also know that not all of them are functional. And we also have critics that so many NGOs and, and then what they are doing, etc., kind of things. But I would say that these NGOs actually play a very important role, in order to strengthen the democratic achievements in Mongolia and to strengthen the human rights situation also in Mongolia. They are very different in terms of structure, in terms of methodologies, in terms of missions, purpose, etc. And at the same time, we also have to recognize that we have also many NGOs. They would not be with us, like Gongos, for example, like government NGOs, or like Bingos, which are business NGOs, just registered under as an NGO, but in order to avoid tax and do business as usual for profit, So the very main feature of NGOs, it's the not-for-profit. And this is very important in not-for-profit and for public interest. And I think that this is now well understood by people and by government officials as well.
What do you think about a successful operation of civil society organizations?
Of course, the finance is the main factor in order for NGOs to do sustainably, to work. All over the world actually recognize that there is need to establish enabling environment for civil society organizations. Enabling environment means like enabling environment for civil society organizations to do their work effectively in terms of politics, economics, finance, laws, regulations, etc. But in case of Mongolia, there is really need to think of financial support. Even we don't really have, for Mongolia, for example, there is no policy to support financially civil society organizations. At least, for example, if the business companies or anyone who make donations to civil society organizations, so they have to be exempted from income tax, but we don't have. It's all over the world, such kind of
incentives.
Yes, incentives. And then also for some kind of tax deduction also should be, if the civil society organizations, do make some income activities, but then income is spent for the mission activities, etc. This kind of supports really needed to be, well designed and
implemented in this country.
and implemented, in Mongolia.
The new amendments to the non-governmental organizations will be discussed during Parliament's spring sessions this year. What do you think about these new amendments? What are they? And what are the civil society organizations' positions on this?
In the purpose of this law, they say that they want to support the development of civil society organizations institutionally and as a sector. So it's very good declaration, but then, the issue is that how you would realize it, through different provisions, But then provisions become very, very, tending to regulate, But then civil society is a thing that mostly on voluntary basis, and then also they very much concerned about their autonomy and independence. And then when it's so big regulations and rules, then it somehow limits this liberty of civil society actions, to have own positions and also to do the things they think or regard right thing, correct thing, So this is making very concerning, and that's why now civil society organizations also try to develop their own positions on what kind of law we want in order to work very effectively to bring very sustainable changes in the country, so that the law, how it should look. And there is a group established to develop conceptual framework. It's a group set by Human Rights NGO Forum, and also including from some other NGOs coming from other networks. The Mongolian civil society organizations very broad and very different. It's very broad range of different organizations. And I said that I told you previously just about registered, civil society organizations.
Yes,
but there are so many unregistered, like for example, like herders groups to maintain pasture management, right? Or for example, like community saving groups to deal with basic needs, etc. So many community-based organizations which are not registered, but they are very important for the society, for people.
Yes, that's right.
And they also need to be supported by this law.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, this law didn't really, recognize them firstly, and secondly, they don't really focus on them, They just left them behind. If you want to get public support from a state budget, support as public interest organization, you need to be registered. You need to be registered, become legal entity, and get. But then so many, as I said, so many unregistered organizations who do, so many good public things.
Yes.
And they certainly need support. They need support in capacity building. They need support in different kind of things,
Yes,
just
that's
even recognition, But
Yes.
there is nothing about. And so that's why I think that this is not really for development of civil society sector,
So is this working group going to produce a report or recommendation to the Parliament?
Yes. We are developing now this conceptual framework, and this conceptual framework needs to be discussed among us first, and to build our common position, because we want to build collective ownership, so that everyone was for this framework. And also after that, we will need to introduce about this conceptual framework to Parliament members. And we are also concerned that there is, in parallel, there is also the draft law on professional associations is going to be discussed by the parliament. But we think that professional associations is also a part of civil society. We really want the parliament to see on this sort of civil society sector in a whole.
I see.
Yeah.
So you just mentioned that there are almost 20,000 NGOs are registered in Mongolia, and I guess many of them are not aware of these new amendments. If they want to contribute their positions to your working group recommendations, how would they contact you?
Actually, this draft law has been consulted during 5 or 6 discussions, among different civil society organizations like environmental, health,
being circulated
etc.
quite a while.
Yeah, quite a while. And now, of course, this conceptual framework also needs to be discussed the same way. And the how to reach us, I think that we are actually based on this Human Rights NGO Forum, and if to reach to Human Rights NGO Forum, Facebook or whatever, then yeah.
Their participation is more than welcome.
Yes, yes.
Ms. Urantsooj, you are involved in a wide range of civil society activities. You are an official member of voluntary national review of the Sustainable Development Goals to the United Nations. Can you give us more information about this project? What is voluntary national review, and what are you trying to accomplish with this report?
So in September 2015, UN General Assembly adopted the Global Development Agenda on Sustainable Development 2030. And this agenda was approved by all UN members, including Mongolia as well. And every UN member country should report, voluntary national review report, on the high-level political forum, UN high-level political forum, which is organized under auspices of UN ECOSOC. And since 2016, the governments started present its national voluntary reviews, and Mongolian government did it last July. For civil society organizations who work for development justice, who work for human rights, democracy, for good governance, for environmental balance, etc., these SDGs are very important, because SDG goals, with its 17 goals and 169 targets, are very comprehensive. And there is no such issue civil societies work which are not included in those SDGs and targets. And so that's why from very beginning, civil society organizations in Mongolia decided to contribute in implementation of SDGs in Mongolia, so that the people benefited from it, not just, reports. So because of this, we were demanding the implementation of SDGs, and we were also demanding the government to produce its voluntary national review report. And when in 2018 the government expressed its interest to do voluntary national review report, we were very glad, and we also expressed our interest to contribute it.
Yes.
And then by that time we have already organized ourselves in network of civil society organizations on SDGs, and we already started collecting data and making analysis, and in comparison with the global SDG targets and indicators, and we already expressed it. So that our initiatives were somehow recognized, and when the Prime Minister established a national working group on preparation for a national voluntary report, I was also involved as CSO representative in this working group. And this working group, actually the multilateral, it includes all government officials, statistics office, and then the international development agencies, in business sector, in civil society sector. So I was involved. And the SDG, CSO network on SDGs, they also developed a report on implementation of SDGs, but not on all 169 targets, but only on those SDG goals and targets which are the most important for them, which are very closely related to their work they've been doing, you know. So like SDG 1, for example, like 1.1, this is the extreme poverty, eradication of extreme poverty, or, you know, like this. So that we have done this civil society joint report, and this report was also presented to the expert group, which actually was set up to draft the government voluntary national review report. So that's our data, our analysis, and our concerns were somehow reflected in
their report.
In their report, yeah. And I think that's we were able to present to all the experts, and then also to the national working group, and then the government report was produced. Of course, the government national review report is very beautiful, very comprehensive, with very good analysis and very good report. But we are very happy that we were listened to, you know, we voiced our concerns, we were listened to, and some of our reflections were included in that. And also now what we expect is that the government, we want that government didn't forget the follow-up, you know, because it's very important. It's important that we have now this, we will have now these targets and indicators. But the most important thing is actually the full reflection of these targets into national development policies. And then also it needs to be reflected in social economic directions, you know, the government, and then also at local level as well. And only after this, they will be able to implement it by the state budget. Otherwise, it will be just on papers, and you know.
Yeah, that's right. So, absolutely. So, on this Civil Society Day, what do you think individual citizens and communities should do?
I should not tell what to do them. Citizens should be able to decide whatever they want to do. But at least I would urge that citizens need to be now in this country to express their solidarity, and if possible, to support in any possible way, you know, because most of civil society organizations who work for social justice, they are working at the very limited resources, you know, human and time and material and everything. So in any possible way, they need to be supported, the first thing. Second thing is communities, you know. I think that the communities now need to be, you know, able to build their collective power, you know, collective power to meet and to deal with the issues they face every day. If they, you know, in many, for the last 15 years, I think one of our motto for CHRD, for example, was like through collective power to development, which would benefit everyone, you know. So this can be done only collectively. We now understood that only in such an organized manner we can multiply our effect, and we can bring the more impacts in laws, in policies, and also at grounds.
I enjoyed our conversation very much, and I hope our audience had the same experience. Thank you very much for coming today to our studio and for giving this insightful interview. I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much, and the same for you.
All right, thank you. Today we had a lifelong human rights advocate and a dedicated civil society activist, Ms. Urantsooj. Thank you for staying with us. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.